12 most explosive sibling rivalries in R&B history. There are 12 families on this list, 12 sets of brothers and sisters who came up together, who shared stages, shared hotel rooms, shared the particular feeling of hearing their name called out by an audience for the very first time. And somewhere along the way, through the labels, through the money, through the weight of one person's star rising higher than the others, those families cracked. Some quietly, some in courtrooms, some in ways that could not be undone even by time. I have carried this list for a while, because every name on it deserved a proper telling. What the industry gave them was not that. Number 12, the Clark sisters, Denise. Before I tell you what happened to this family, let me tell you who they were. The Clark sisters, 5 daughters of Dr. Mattie Moss Clark, one of the most consequential women in the history of American gospel music. Jackie, Denise, Twinkie, Dorinda, and Karen. They grew up in Detroit in the Church of God in Christ. Their mother was the minister of music for the entire denomination. She shaped the sound of a generation of gospel choirs, and her daughters carried that gift in every direction it could go. They have been recording since 1973. They are responsible for "You Brought the Sunshine," one of the first gospel songs to cross into mainstream R&B radio. They have won Grammys. They have been sampled by Beyoncé and Jay-Z. They influenced Mariah Carey, Missy Elliott, and virtually every woman in R&B who can actually sing. And I need you to hold that for a moment. 5 sisters, one sound, one mother who built all of it, the full architecture of a legacy. Then there were 4. Denise Clark Bradford left the group, and the circumstances of how she left, and the silence that grew between them, is what this entry is about. Denise had 3 children, all born outside of marriage, in a gospel family, in a church community, in a world where those facts were weaponized. And according to what we know from the family's biopic, the Lifetime film that premiered in 2020, which the sisters themselves helped tell, Denise did not feel love from her sisters in the way she needed it. She was treated poorly. She felt like an outsider inside her own family. She walked away, and the distance lasted. At their mother's funeral, the funeral of the woman whose entire life was this music and these daughters, Denise appeared, and the moment captured everything that had been left unresolved between them. The years, the hurt, the thing that had calcified into something that could not be fixed in a single room. Karen Clark Sheard spoke about it afterward. "Every family goes through issues," she said. "We always welcome our sister back. Our arms have been stretched wide open for years." And I want to be precise about this. There is no clean villain in this story. There are hurt people, people who wore faith like armor and did not realize what was corroding underneath it. People who loved publicly and did not know how to repair what had broken privately. The Clark sisters still perform. They are extraordinary, but there is a voice that belongs in that harmony and is not there. If this name was in your house growing up, you already know what I mean when I say that. Number 11, Sister Sledge, Kathy. Let me tell you who Kathy Sledge was before I tell you what her own sisters did to her. Kathy Sledge was the youngest of 4 sisters from Philadelphia: Debbie, Joni, Kim, and Kathy. Their grandmother was a soprano opera singer who trained them from childhood. Their mother managed them. They had been performing since before most of them were teenagers. In 1979, Nile Rodgers and Bernard Edwards took them into the studio. What came out of that session was the album We Are Family. He's the Greatest Dancer, Lost in Music, and the title track, which became an anthem for unity that an entire culture adopted as its own. The voice at the center of that record, 16 years old, Kathy Sledge recorded the lead vocal to We Are Family, line by line, phrase by phrase, having never heard the song before Nile Rodgers played it to her in the studio. She had not seen the sheet music. She did not know where it was going. She just sang it back. Her voice, her soul, on one of the most recognized recordings in the history of popular music. We Are Family reached #1 on the R&B chart. The group had sold over 20 million records. Their song would eventually be inducted into the Grammy Hall of Fame, and then the business entered the story. In 1989, Kathy told her sisters she wanted to do a solo project. Her sisters gave her an ultimatum: you can do a solo project, or you can be in Sister Sledge. Not both. Kathy said she was asked to leave. She left. And then, and I want to be very clear about this, she was sued by Debbie, Joni, and Kim for attempting to use the Sister Sledge name in her solo performances. $200,000, a trademark infringement lawsuit filed by 3 sisters against the 4th, against the youngest, against the voice on We Are Family. Kathy Sledge has spoken about it with precision. I never sued anyone. I never would, and I never left the band. I did a solo project, and I was asked to leave. I was sued so that I couldn't perform as or from Sister Sledge, and that was frustrating to me. I like singing with a group. I'm not fighting my sisters, but I had to fight for the right to sing. In 2015, when Sister Sledge was invited to sing We Are Family at the World Meeting of Families in Philadelphia, in front of Pope Francis, Kathy was excluded from the performance. Her own sisters refused to allow the original lead vocalist of We Are Family to stand on that stage. Kathy Sledge eventually won a legal battle in 2021 and now performs as Sister Sledge, featuring Kathy Sledge. Sister Joni Sledge passed away in 2017. Before she died, she and Kathy made peace. We were loving and hugging, Kathy said. That reconciliation happened. That is true, but so is everything that came before it. And I will say clearly what most people will not say. Asking the voice of We Are Family to fight in court for the right to sing under her own family name is not a business decision. It is something else entirely. Real talk. Only 9% of you are subscribed. That hurts. We're spending hours digging through archives, fact-checking every detail, bringing these stories back to life. And if you're watching this far, you clearly care. So hit subscribe. It's free and takes 2 seconds. Now, to my subscribers, barely any of you have joined the membership. And honestly, that stings even more. You know the work we put in. You keep coming back. If these videos have ever made you feel something, if this music means something to you, join the membership. It's $1 coffee a month, and it's the only way we keep this going. Let's build this together. All right, back to it. Number 10, The Pointer Sisters, Bonnie. The Pointer Sisters, Ruth, Anita, Bonnie, and June, were the daughters of a minister in Oakland, California. It was Bonnie who pushed earliest for the professional career. Bonnie, who co-founded the group with her youngest sister June in 1969, before Ruth and Anita joined. Bonnie, who helped establish the sonic identity that made them unlike anything else on the radio: jazz, gospel, R&B, country, funk, all of it inhabiting the same four voices. They were the first black female group to perform at the Grand Ole Opry in 1974. They won their first Grammy, Best Country Vocal Performance by a Duo or Group, for Fairy Tale, which Bonnie co-wrote with Anita. Elvis Presley recorded a version of that song. Let that land for a moment. Elvis Presley recorded a song that four black women from Oakland wrote about a failing relationship. And then Bonnie left in 1977. What Anita said about that moment: "We were devastated. We did a show the night she left, but after that, we just stopped. We thought it wasn't going to work without Bonnie." But here is the part that Ruth Pointer wrote about in her memoir, the part that makes this story what it really is. A Motown producer named Jeffrey Bowen had entered Bonnie's life. He began a romantic relationship with her, and then, according to Ruth, he began systematically working to pull Bonnie away from her sisters. Ruth wrote that Bowen was violent, controlling, and manipulative, and that after Bonnie married him in 1980, he barred her sisters from speaking to her. Ruth also noted that Bowen had previously broken up a different act by pulling one of its members into a failed solo effort. Bonnie's solo career under Bowen's management produced some modest success. Her disco cover of Heaven Must Have Sent You in 1979 reached the top 10, and then, largely, silence. The three remaining sisters, Ruth, Anita, and June, went on to their greatest commercial success in the 1980s. 2 more Grammys: Jump, For My Love, Automatic, Slow Hand. 13 top 20 hits between 1973 and 1987. They became bigger without Bonnie than they had ever been with her. Bonnie Pointer died in June 2020 at the age of 69. Anita's statement after her death: "Bonnie was my best friend. We talked every day. We never had a fight in our life." The four sisters who could not keep their act together never had a fight with each other. The force that came between them had another name entirely. Number 9, Mary Mary Erica and Tina Campbell. If you have spent any time near gospel music in the last 25 years, you know Mary Mary, Erica and Tina Campbell, sisters from Inglewood, California, formed in 1998, signed to Columbia Records in 1999. Their debut album, Thankful, went double platinum. Shackles, Praise You, charted internationally in ways that gospel music had not managed before. They were not just gospel artists. They were the ones who built the bridge between the church and the culture when most people said it could not be built. And then, in full view of a national television audience, across 6 seasons of a WETV reality series, those two sisters came very close to the edge. The year is 2013. Tina Campbell's husband, drummer Teddy Campbell, had been unfaithful. The other woman was someone she knew personally. Tina described what she went through in an interview on The Steve Harvey Show. She said she was practicing dying every day. That is not an exaggeration. That is a woman who was that close to something that cannot be undone. And in the middle of all of that, in March 2014, Erica Campbell launched her debut solo album. The album was called Help. It debuted at number 6 on the Billboard 200. It won Erica a Grammy Award for Best Gospel Album. Erica spoke about the conversation she had with Tina before announcing the project. She said, "I had to kind of explain to her that you can't have both. You can't tell me I'm not working or doing anything and expect me to just sit and wait until you're ready. I'm a creative person. I'm a grown woman with a family. I love what I do." Tina was not ready for that. The cameras caught what followed. The arguments about contractual obligations, Tina leaving the stage, Erica performing alone, while her sister's marriage was in pieces. Two women who were built to harmonize, briefly unable to occupy the same professional space without friction. The 5th season of their reality show was described by television critics as a breaking point. On camera, the sisters argued about Tina's solo career, about divided loyalties, about what it meant to be a sister when being an artist demanded something that your sister could not give you. Tina Campbell eventually forgave her husband. They renewed their vows. She released her own solo album, It's Personal, in 2015. It debuted at number 1 on the Top Gospel Albums chart. Erica and Tina are still Mary. They still sing together. The show ended after 6 seasons. But for a period of time that the whole world could watch, they were two separate people, pulling in opposite directions, connected by blood and unable to escape what that meant. Number 8. BeBe and CeCe Winans. There are 10 children in the Winans family of Detroit, Michigan. Almost all of them have had music careers. And if you know this family, you already understand how rare that is and what kind of weight it carries. The 4 eldest brothers, Marvin, Ronald, Carvin, and Michael, formed the Winans in the early 1980s. Gospel royalty. They were given 6 Grammy Awards. Their sound defined a generation of church music. BeBe and CeCe were the 7th and 8th children. In 1982, they appeared as part of the PTL Singers on Jim and Tammy Faye Backer's television program. They were teenagers, 15 and 17 years old, and they spent the next 6 years building an audience that lived on both sides of the line between gospel and contemporary R&B. When they signed with Sparrow Records in 1987 and began releasing music, the sound was undeniably contemporary. Their debut single, I O U Me, topped both the R&B chart and the gospel chart simultaneously. Their 1988 album, Heaven, became the first gospel album to reach number 1 on the Billboard sales chart. Their music was being played by people who had never been inside a church. Club DJs were spinning it. And within the wider Winans family, and within the gospel community that had raised them, that crossover was not always embraced. Soul music historians have documented the ongoing tension within gospel during this era around what was called the Jesus count, how explicitly spiritual a song had to be to qualify as genuine gospel. BeBe and CeCe were often at the center of that debate. The songs that crossed over were precisely the songs that contained fewer explicit declarations of faith. That was not accidental, and it was not without consequence within a family whose entire identity was built on that declaration. BeBe Winans has spoken about growing up in a family of extraordinary talent and navigating what it meant to do things differently, to carve a path that his brother's group had not walked, to cross lines that his family's reputation had been built on holding. I want to be precise about this. BeBe and CeCe Winans did not wage a public war with their siblings. This is not that kind of story. This is the story of a family where the definition of faithfulness to God, to gospel, to each other's expectations was quietly contested, and where that quiet contest left its mark. They won 3 Grammys together. They sold over 3 million records. They were inducted into the Hollywood Walk of Fame in 2011. In 2009, they came back together after 14 years apart to record the album Still, which won 2 more Grammy Awards. The Winans are still a family, still largely intact, and still, the question of what it meant to cross over was never fully resolved inside that house. Number 7, Brandy and Ray J. This story is recent, and it is still unfolding. Brandy Norwood and her younger brother Ray J, William Ray Norwood Jr., grew up in Carson, California. They are not just siblings. They are a story about 2 people who built their entire identities in public, side by side, for 30 years, and who are now, by Brandy's own account, separated by something she cannot quite bring herself to name. Brandy was one of the defining artists of the 1990s. Her debut album at 15 years old, her role on Moesha, a Cinderella on television that an entire generation of children watched. And then, The Boy Is Mine, the duet with Monica that spent 13 consecutive weeks at #1 on the Billboard Hot 100. That record still stands as the most successful song by a female duo in the history of American music. Brandy was so prominent that she had a Barbie doll in her likeness. Ray J was always, in those early years, Brandy's little brother. He appeared in her videos. He was on her red carpets. He had genuine success of his own. One Wish, Sexy Can I? But the first sentence was always, Brandy's brother. He eventually built a separate identity, one that diverged sharply from his sisters. One that Brandy, increasingly, could not follow him into. In 2024, Brandy spoke about the distance between them, with care and with precision. She said, "There is distance right now. There are a few things that he's been doing in the public eye that I don't condone, and I just feel like loving him from afar right now is best for me." Loving him from afar. Ray J has spoken in his own interviews about feeling like he no longer feels like her brother, that something changed, that the connection that was built in front of the whole world has become something neither of them knows how to hold. I know, I felt the same way reading it. This is not manufactured drama. This is not a beef. This is what happens when 2 people love each other and cannot reconcile who the other person has become. That is a specific kind of grief that does not announce itself. It just arrives. The 2 of them appeared together in Brandy's 1994 video for Best Friend. Little siblings, singing, laughing. That was 30 years ago. Number 6, Gladys Knight and the Pips. Let me tell you who the Pips were, not just who Gladys Knight was, who the Pips were. Merrill Bubba Knight was Gladys's brother. William Guest and Edward Patton were her cousins. The group started in Atlanta in 1952 at Bubba's 10th birthday party when the record player broke and the family simply started singing. The name came from another cousin, James Pip Woods. They performed in that configuration, Gladys, Bubba, and their cousins, for nearly 4 decades, not as a star and her backup, as a family, as a unit. Every Grammy they won together. Every stage they walked together. Their signature song, Midnight Train to Georgia, their first and only #1 hit on the pop chart in 1973, was a record that made all 4 of them. The Pips' background harmonies on that song are as essential to its power as Gladys's lead. You cannot separate them. And then something happened that revealed how the music business saw the arrangement. In 1977, legal complications with their label Buddha Records forced Gladys Knight and the Pips to record as separate acts, separately, because of contractual language and business disputes that had nothing to do with the family and everything to do with the structure of the deal. Gladys recorded solo albums. The Pips recorded as their own act. For nearly 3 years, a family that had been one thing for a quarter century was legally compelled to compete against itself. And the music industry watched, and calculated, and issued contracts. They reunited in 1980 on Columbia Records. They continued making records through the decade. Their final single together, Love Overboard, won them a Grammy in 1989, the same year Gladys Knight and the Pips disbanded for good, with the Pips retiring and Gladys embarking on a solo career. Bubba Knight stayed on as her tour manager. I want to be clear about what I am saying here. This was not a feud. This was not a public explosion. Gladys Knight and her brother Bubba have maintained a relationship throughout their lives. The disbandment of 1989 was, by most accounts, amicable. The Pips retired. Gladys went solo, but think about that. The Pips retired, 3 men who had given their entire professional lives to a family group, and the industry's framework gave them no runway of their own. The label had made Gladys into the name. And when the name was sufficient to carry a solo career, the framework no longer had a use for the people who had helped build her into what she was. The Pips are in the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame. They are there because Gladys carried them in. And that is simultaneously an honor and an indictment of everything that preceded it. Number 5, the Five Stairsteps. There is a name that preceded the name you know. Before there was a first family of soul in the Midwest, there was another family. Chicago, 1965. Alohe, Clarence Jr., James, Dennis, and Kenny Burke. The children of a Chicago police detective named Clarence Burke Sr., who retired from the force, picked up a bass guitar, and became their manager and their bassist. He drove them across the country in a station wagon. He played on their records. He raised them to be this. Their mother named them. She said that when her children stood in a line by age, they looked like a set of stair steps. The Five Stairsteps. They were introduced to Curtis Mayfield by a neighbor who was a member of the Impressions. Mayfield signed them to his label, booked them into a recording studio with a full orchestra, and told these children, The oldest was 16 years old. That's for you, babies. In 1966, their first single, You Waited Too Long, reached number 16 on the R&B chart. They were teenagers. In 1970, they released OOH Child, a transcendent 3 minutes of soul and hope that reached number 8 on the Billboard Hot 100, sold over 1 million copies, and was listed by Rolling Stone as one of the 500 greatest songs ever recorded. This record was also described by Rolling Stone as a pop soul classic that rivaled the hits of another sibling gang, the Jackson 5, and Rolling Stone credited the Five Stairsteps with helping inspire the formation of the Jackson 5 in the first place. They beat the Jackson 5 in a talent contest at the Regal Theater, Let That Land. The family who inspired the most famous family in the history of R&B music. And then what happened? The title First Family of Soul was passed to the Jackson 5. The Five Stairsteps continued recording. They signed with George Harrison's Dark Horse label in 1976, released Second Resurrection, and their single, From Us to You, reached number 10 on the R&B chart. It was a genuine hit, and then the group dissolved. The family scattered. Kenny Burke became a songwriter and producer, writing for artists including Keith Sweat and others. His name appears in credits that most people have never thought to trace back to a kid from Chicago who stood in a line of siblings that looked like a staircase. Clarence Burke Jr., the lead singer, the voice on OOH Child, died on May 26, 2013. He was 64 years old. James Burke died on February 19, 2021. He was 70. The family that taught the world what a first family of soul could sound like did not get the monument that title deserved. Talent without documentation is just genius with no witnesses. Number 3, DeBarge. The music survived, the family did not. The DeBarge family, 10 children born to Robert DeBarge Sr. and Ederline Abney in Detroit and later Grand Rapids, Michigan, were supposed to be Motown's answer to the Jackson 5, discovered through connections to Jermaine Jackson, signed to Motown's Gordy Records. And between 1982 and 1985, they made a run of records that belonged to anyone who was alive and paying attention. All This Love, I Like It, Time Will Reveal, Rhythm of the Night, which topped both the adult contemporary and R&B charts and reached number 3 pop in 1985. Who's Holding Donna Now? 5 of the 8 singing DeBarge siblings signed to the same label at the same time. 8 siblings, 1 label, 1 family, 1 spectacular, fragile thing. El DeBarge was the focal point. His voice, a falsetto that sat somewhere between Michael Jackson and Marvin Gaye, was the architecture everything else was built around. In 1986, El left the group to go solo. His first single, Who's Johnny, from the film Short Circuit, reached number 3 on the pop chart. His debut solo album went gold, and the group that remained could not hold. James DeBarge had married Janet Jackson in a secret ceremony in 1984. The union lasted less than a year before it was annulled in 1985. James's addiction to painkillers and sleeping pills was cited. The Jackson family had not approved. The marriage that connected the 2 most famous R&B families in Motown history ended quickly and badly, and left marks that neither family has fully processed to this day. Bobby DeBarge, the eldest brother, the one whose voice had inspired Elle, the one who had been in the group Switch before any of the others were signed, had struggled with substance abuse for years. Bobby was incarcerated for drug trafficking, and on August 16, 1995, Bobby DeBarge died of AIDS-related illness in a Mansfield, Ohio prison. He was 39 years old. His music, his voice, his contributions to the family sound has been sampled by Mary J. Blige, Tupac Shakur, and the Notorious B.I.G., among others. His name, on many of those credits, is not there. Elle DeBarge, who departed the family first and who holds the rights to the group's music catalog, went on to have a career that moved through periods of success and periods of addiction and long silences. His siblings, some of whom were documented as living in RVs on the streets of Los Angeles in recent years, did not follow him into any of those successes. A 2024 documentary about the family premiered at the Slam Dance Film Festival and prompted a fresh rift. Several family members said they were not told about the project in advance and were not given the opportunity to participate or approve their likenesses. The music survived. The people who made it did not all survive with it, and that is not the same thing. Number 2, Jermaine and Michael Jackson. Jermaine Jackson was Michael Jackson's first musical hero. Michael said it himself. He said, "Growing up, it was Jermaine I focused on. He'd walk me to school. I'd get his hand-me-down clothes. It was his voice that I first imitated. I loved his sound. He showed me the way." Jermaine was the second lead vocalist of the Jackson 5. He sang on "I Want You Back." He sang on "I'll Be There." His solo debut in 1972, "Daddy's Home," sold over 1 million copies. He was, at that point, everything Michael was looking at and working toward. And then in 1975, the Jackson 5 decided to leave Motown for Epic Records. They wanted creative control. They had been receiving a royalty rate of 2.7% per record, one of the lowest in the industry for acts of their stature. They were ready to own their music. Jermaine stayed. He was 20 years old. He was married to Hazel Gordy, the daughter of Motown founder Berry Gordy. He cited loyalty to the label and to that family as his reason. And in that moment, he chose Motown over his brothers. Randy Jackson, the youngest, replaced him. Jermaine later described what that felt like. The sense of detachment and loneliness was profound. I didn't feel like I had lost my right arm. I felt like I had lost every limb. And Michael said about the first show they did without Jermaine, "I clearly remember it because it was so painful for me." Two people in genuine pain, that is what this was at the beginning. What came afterward was something else. The 1980s arrived. Jermaine, now signed to Arista Records, had a steady career of soulful R&B hits, "Let's Get Serious," "Do What You Do," "Dynamite," that kept him relevant to black radio through the decade. He was doing real work. And Michael, on Off the Wall, on Thriller, on Bad, had become something that has no precise equivalent in the history of popular music. He was not just famous, he was the most famous entertainer on earth. The gap between what the two brothers had become was not competitive. It was another order of magnitude entirely. Clive Davis wrote in his memoir, Soundtrack of My Life, that during the period when Jermaine was signed to Arista Records, Michael allegedly intervened to undermine his brother's career there. Davis brought in producers Kenny Babyface Edmonds and L.A. Reid to work with Jermaine. And according to Davis's account, Michael made moves to ensure that Jermaine's work with those producers did not advance. An older brother, a younger brother. The younger brother became the most famous person on the planet, and then, allegedly, used that position to ensure the older brother's career would not rise. Whether the full truth of that claim belongs to Clive Davis or to something more complicated, only Jermaine and Michael ever knew. What I can tell you is documented. The brothers spent years navigating a relationship that was simultaneously one of the most intimate and one of the most painful in the history of this music. They collaborated. They appeared together at Motown 25, where the moonwalk happened. They went on the Victory Tour. They recorded Tell Me I'm Not Dreamin', a duet that Jermaine sang without Michael because Michael's label would not permit the release as a joint single. Jermaine was not allowed to appear on the official version, a duet where one brother could not be credited alongside the other. Michael Jackson died on June 25, 2009. The lawsuit, the Victory Tour, the reunion, the alleged sabotage, the love that started with a walk to school in Gary, Indiana, all of it ended at once. Jermaine has never fully spoken about what he carried out of that relationship. If you were there in 1975, if you understood what it meant when Jermaine stayed at Motown and his brothers left, you never forgot that moment. Number 1, the Jackson family. Let me start where this story actually starts. Not with the Jackson 5, not with Motown. Before all of that, Joe Jackson, Joseph Walter Jackson, had 5 sons and 4 daughters who could all sing. He had been a guitar player himself in a group that never went anywhere. And when he understood what was living inside his children's voices, he made a decision about what those voices were for. He worked them every day. He was not gentle about it. His children have spoken, in detail, about the instrument of fear he used to shape them. Tito Jackson broke one of Joe's guitar strings once, as a child, and was beaten for it. The belt was a regular tool. The rehearsals were compulsory. The standard was impossibly high, and the consequence for falling short was physical. Michael Jackson spoke about his father in a 2003 documentary. He said that when he saw his father, his heart would start beating faster, that the proximity of his father was a source of dread, that he had never had a childhood, that the thing Joe Jackson had built had consumed the thing that should have been a boy playing, being free, being nothing in particular. And yet, from that compulsion, that fear, those driven rehearsals, came something that changed the world. The Jackson 5 signed with Motown Records in 1969. They were the first recording act to have 4 consecutive #1 singles on the Billboard Hot 100. Not the first black act, not the first family act. The first recording act, all 4 of them, I Want You Back, ABC, The Love You Save, and I'll Be There, reached #1 in sequence. In 1970, they were children. But Joe Jackson had built a system where the currency was comparison, where being the best in the room was the standard. and being anything less was failure. He had 8 children in a commercial music enterprise, and the apparatus rewarded one of them above all others. We have talked about Jermaine. We have talked about what happened in 1975 when the group left Motown and Jermaine stayed. We have talked about the alleged sabotage at Arista Records. But there is more than that. Jackie, Tito, Marlon, and Randy Jackson, 4 brothers who had been in the act from the beginning or near it, gave their professional lives to a group where Michael's ascending stardom made their individual contributions increasingly invisible. The Victory album in 1984 was a Jackson family record. Michael, according to documented accounts, had to be convinced to appear on it at all. His vision, his pace, his requirements had become the only things that mattered. LaToya Jackson, one of Joe and Catherine's daughters, was estranged from her family for years. She made public statements about abuse within the Jackson household. She was managed for a period by a man named Jack Gordon, whom she later accused of controlling and exploiting her. The family disputed her claims. She eventually reconciled with her siblings, but the fracture that went public was real and long and documented. Rebby Jackson, the eldest daughter, was largely separate from the commercial machinery, a career singer in her own right who lived largely outside the spotlight her family generated. And then there is Janet. Janet Jackson built the most successful solo career of any Jackson sibling other than Michael. Control in 1986, Rhythm Nation 1814 in 1989, Janet in 1993. She did it without her father as manager. She did it on the explicit terms that Joe Jackson would not be her professional representative. She fired him. And then she became, arguably, the most commercially successful black female artist of her generation. That act of separation, that recognition that what Joe Jackson built was not a launching pad but a cage, is the thing that allowed her to be what she became. But here is what I most need you to hold. Joe Jackson used his children's talent to build a commercial machine, and the machine produced something extraordinary. And the machine also produced adults who spent decades, some of them their entire professional lives, trying to disentangle their sense of self from what they had been made to be as children. Michael Jackson, worth hundreds of millions of dollars, was a man who could not sleep without anesthesia, who described a childhood of rehearsal, discipline, and fear so complete that the most successful entertainer in history could not access the thing that most people take for granted, the ordinary safety of being, for a moment, no one in particular. The Jackson family gave more to the culture of R&B and soul and pop music than almost any other family in the history of American music.